Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On the show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions, capital raising, joint ventures, strategic alliances, real estate, affiliate and sponsorship deals, and more, including smaller deals that you can do without significant capital. My name is Corey Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for over 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the DealQuest Podcast. Let's get started. Noah Graff is the host of Swarfcast, a podcast that helps professionals in precision machining excel in their careers. For over a decade, he has been a used machine tool dealer, or a treasure hunter, as he calls it, buying and selling used equipment all over the world at his family company, Graff. In recent years, his company has brokered several successful M&A deals in the precision machining industry. He's also a blogger and editor for a B2B website called Today's Machining World, directed at the precision machining community. Every day, he strives to be in serendipity, to be a serendipity magnet. And that's something he and I talked about in our pre-call, and I want to definitely get that in here. He strives to be a serendipity magnet, seeking, seeing, and seizing new opportunities he finds everywhere. I am so excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome, Noah.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is so much fun.
Great. So, Noah, before we get into everything you've done in terms of some of these M&A deals that you've helped facilitate in this particular niche and your background generally in the conversation of serendipity, I want to take you back to when you were a little kid growing up, maybe 8, 10, 12 years old. What did you want to be? Because for most of our guests, it turns out probably not what they're doing now, but for you, it was a family business. So who knows? You tell me.
Yeah. The family business always seemed like something in my back pocket, I suppose. But no, when I was growing up, I'd say my passion was filmmaking. And my friend and I, we first got into it, actually, we were in 7th or 8th grade and we watched the film Back to the Future 3. And at the end of the movie, they got this flying train and we were just like, oh, this is ridiculous. I bet you if we tried, we could make something even worse. And so the next day, we made Back to the Future 4, in which case I would get flushed down the toilet whenever I'd go to the bathroom. And then my friend would all of a sudden be the main character. It's amazing when you're a kid, how you're just not held by rules like you are now. I mean, it's like, all right, I'm the character in the present and he's the character in the past or the future or wherever, and it doesn't matter. Yeah, that was what I wanted to do. And then in college, I majored in film, communication arts, and history.
Wow.
And then I lived in Italy for a little while after I graduated. I had studied abroad there and fell in love with the place and made a documentary about this restaurant there, and that's a whole other story. But came back and I was sort of at a crossroads, and my dad, he had started this B2B magazine about precision machining because this business was started 80 years ago, buying and selling machines. Specifically, they're called screw machines. These are capital equipment meant for making round parts that go into automotive or aerospace or medical. But my dad had been a journalism master's degree. He had gotten a journalism master's degree. So he started this magazine. And then he says to me, this is like 2005, and he was a little ahead of his time. He's like, oh, broadband's coming. You can make videos that go along with our content. And I didn't know what I wanted to do at the time. And I wasn't. So I said, all right, I'll give it a shot. And I went and worked for that. I made some videos and I got into the editing and writing. And then eventually in about 2011, we decided to take the magazine all online, and it became more or less a blog, and it finally made a little bit of money. And then I was like, all right, well, we have time. Why don't I try the family business, the treasure hunting business? And that's funny the way it got to be the treasure hunting, because I was seeing an analyst at the time, and I was still trying to figure things out. Aren't we all? We're still trying to figure things out right now, right? But I said to him, I was telling him about this documentary I was making at the time, because I was always doing these side projects. I was making a documentary about...
This film thing continues. It just continues.
It continues, yeah. I was making a documentary about Ferris Bueller's Day Off and all the locations that he goes in the movie. And so, because I live in Chicago, so we'd go to like the Sears Tower, or we got this Ferrari replica, and we went to the house and went everywhere. And I was telling my psychologist about all the locations and the hunt to find all these places. And he's like, you're a treasure hunter. And this is what you do when you're looking. We scour the world looking for equipment. We go everywhere. I've bought machines in like a barn in Slovenia. We've bought machines. I'm telling you, it was this machine in Slovenia, and behind a wall, you could hear a cow mooing. And it was just this crazy esoteric machine that this Spanish customer of ours had for some reason wanted. And so we gone everywhere to find machines. We've bought machines out from underground caves where they were keeping the U.S. arsenal. We've bought machines just from the strangest people in all different continents. So that's kind of how I got to where I am today. As far as I know, this is an M&A centered podcast. So
before we jump to that, because it's really interesting to me, this concept of sort of treasure hunting, which can apply across. So whether it's scouting locations for a documentary, or whether it's finding machines that, finding
the love of your life.
There you go. And that concept of treasure hunting, I know because we had a quick pre-call, and I want to...
You had a great pre-call, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So yeah, how does that... Let's keep the theme of treasure hunting, or I don't know if you want to even bring in the serendipity conversation now.
Of course.
Because that it's not like... There was... The impression I got from our pre-call was that the move to be involved in M&A in this space, because obviously buying and selling machines is a deal of types, but that's more on the sales side, which is not what this podcast is about. But this sort of treasure hunting mentality and sort of serendipity outlook led you to be involved in M&A as well, right?
Well, serendipity is all about one thing leading you to the next thing.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things on my podcast, I interview people in our business in precision machining. But the other thing I love to talk about is serendipity and making your own luck, which is what we all do. Some people are better at it than others. And in the machinery business, it's all about connections and noticing things. And you'll be talking to one person and they'll mention they had this machine that they were trying to sell and they couldn't sell it. And then a week later, you'll talk to somebody else, and in the middle of the conversation, something will come up about that machine, and you just put these two and two things together, and you're like, holy crap, how did this quote unquote coincidence happen? So we'll go back. Serendipity. Sometimes I deviate a little bit on the podcast and interview just interesting people who I happen to hear on other podcasts or meet. And there's a guy who wrote a book about serendipity. It's called The Serendipity Mindset. His name is Christian Bush. And I had already been using these principles a lot, but when you are conscious of them, when you're present, when you're mindful of certain things, then all of a sudden you go, oh, okay, now I can really harness them. So I'll just go over a few of them that some of them you'll go, oh, it's sort of obvious. And some of them go, oh, wow, this is kind of golden. So the first thing he does, and this is sort of intuitive, it's called serendipity bombs. So you need anything. Say you're in M&A and you have a company for sale and you're looking for a buyer, you don't just go and contact one person who seems good. You might do a bunch of research and you find one company and you contact 10 of them. Sure. Because, and they're often long shots. And I know in M&A, it usually seems like it's a long shot, no matter how good a fit some company seems, right? You contact 10 of them and then maybe one comes back and it works out. Okay, so did you get lucky when you found that company? I suppose, but you made your own luck by contacting a whole bunch of people. Yeah, it makes sense, but if you're thinking about it, then you'll actually do it. And another one that I love, this is called serendipity hooks. Okay. So this is where there are certain things you can do in a conversation to make important information come out. Okay. Now, it's not just about being a good listener in conversations, because if you're letting the other person do all the talking, you're going to learn important things. But sometimes you need to say certain things for important things to come out. So, like the simplest thing would be, for instance, somebody asks you, Corey, what do you do for a living, right? Or somebody asks me, what do I do for a living? I could say, well, I'm a used machine tool dealer. And often people will go, huh? Right. Or if you say to somebody you're an M&A, some people are going to get it and a lot of people aren't. So what you could say instead of that, you say, well, I'm a machinery dealer, but I also have a podcast and I'm really into film and I love salsa dancing, but I don't really have much time to do it because now I have a 1-year-old kid. And all of a sudden you have like 6 things to talk about. Yeah. People love to talk about kids. Some people, they'll go, what? You have a podcast? Like, I have a podcast. I listen to podcasts all day. And some of these things, they may seem tangential, but then you connect with them and information will come out. So where it goes with the M&A stuff is I'll call people about a machine to buy or sell a machine. And then it'll get to the point in the conversation where maybe we've already talked about the machine. And then at the end of the conversation, I go, well, but one other thing before I get off from you, I have to ask all our customers about this. Are you looking to acquire another company to get new business? I often don't like to say, are you looking to sell your company? Because I don't know, I wonder about people's reaction. In retrospect, I feel like people have less of a bad reaction than you'd expect. I don't know how you feel about that. But in any case, then they go, well, actually, yeah, we're getting old, we're retiring, we're fingers crossed about to close on a company in Canada. And yeah, he called about a machine, it's called a Citizen, it's a CNC machine. And he was just curious. A lot of people just call because they're just curious. They want free information, they want the price, etc. And then I told him about it, told him about what we do. And then next thing you know, we call this one guy who's always interested in every company. You know the type. You've got like your few go-to people where, yes, I'm interested. Give me information. And sure enough, like 6 months later, we're right on the verge of selling the company. This guy, there was no business to be done with buying or selling a machine. He really wasn't in the market, but it was contact. And all of a sudden you say things and then information comes out. So like, those are 2 of the best thing. And then it's just making connections, lots of connections, having conversations. You do, what they call it, connecting the dots. And what this guy says, not only is it good to connect, to get more dots for yourself, to meet as many people as possible, but it's really good to connect other people to each other. And so when you meet somebody new, the first thing you do is you think, who else do I know who could benefit from meeting this person? And then you make a match, and it's like all of a sudden the universe just comes to you because you're making dots and you're connecting dots. And it's just a beautiful thing. And you have to keep your eyes and your ears open. You may hear something from someone, and it's just all of a sudden you think it's a coincidence, but a lot of it is just you're mindful. And Corey, it seems like you're really into like personal development stuff. So I'm sure you think about mindfulness a lot. In the morning, I do like a gratitude list, and I do this I am like aphorism list. So I say, I am a serendipity magnet. I create, I see, and I seize opportunity everywhere. And I say that a whole bunch of times to myself in the morning. And then by doing that, like I'm ready for when I'm out and I'm talking to people, just making connections in my head, remembering to maybe talk to somebody a little longer than you might have, give somebody a try, and just keep your eyes and your ears open. You just got to be mindful of it. So I don't know. I find it really exciting. I love to talk about it. I do solo podcasts where I talk about it, and it's like, and I know, Corey, I know you can relate to this, where the more you talk about something, the more you understand it better.
Sure.
And yeah, it's my thing. Serendipity is my thing. And it makes life really interesting. And I love talking about it.
I love it. And listen, that's interesting. If anybody is a new listener or viewer of this podcast, you might say, oh, wow, okay, we mentioned M&A, but what is this whole conversation, serendipity, interesting conversation for an M&A. And it's not an M&A, it's for a deals podcast of all types. But our long-term listeners will understand that we bring all kinds of elements that impact deals into this. We don't just have on investment bankers to talk about how you value companies or how you shop them or you package them or whatever. And one of the things that I love about this conversation is that we've had many, many guests on, no matter what their role has been, buyers, sellers, intermediaries, et cetera, could talk about the value of relationships and networks, right? To be able to get deals done.
Yeah.
Well, think about what we just talked about. This conversation, you mentioned so many things just that people might have missed. You talked about talking to somebody a little longer. You talked about these serendipity hooks that ask the kind of questions that may bring out some commonalities or connections that you wouldn't otherwise have. People ask me all the time, how do I find deals? Well, there's sort of traditional easy way to say, oh, well, you can have a broker or an investment banker search for a company for you, or you can go on this listing service, or you can whatever. But the best deals are always found through relationship, through connection, through who you know or who you know,
right.
Knows somebody. So all of this,
because that's what we like to, when we've only been doing M&A a couple of years. We've only done, you could probably count on two hands how many we've done, probably. Yeah. But I feel we can still say to people, we've been in business 80 years because we have all the contacts, we understand the industry, and half the time we know personally at least one of the parties, but often both of them. And it's totally different when you know both of them because you've already dealt with them already. You kind of know if somebody's a good fit, it's less surprises. So as you said, those are the ones that usually work when you're not. Yeah, it's exciting if you meet two different people and they both connect. That's cool. But it's all serendipity, really. Advertising is serendipity as well. You're putting hooks out there when you do it, and one hook might lead to another. Half the time you put a machine out on one of these sites and somebody calls about it and they aren't even interested in that machine. They're interested in a totally different machine, or they're interested in buying and selling a company. I had another guy who's looking for a company and he called about a machine we had on our website. And he's like, well, I just want to know what these things are worth, which sometimes you get annoyed when people are like trying to get free information. But at the same time, the more I talked to him, then I realized, oh, this is why he's calling. This is why he wants the values, because he's thinking of buying a company.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. Let's take a break from the show for a minute so I can tell you about an incredible resource my team and I have put together for you. Secrets of Deal-Driven Growth, Creative Ways to Grow Your Business Even in Challenging Times, is a powerful ebook that helps you take DealQuest podcast episodes and apply them to your own life and business. This is the ideal tool for anyone looking for creative ways to grow as deal makers, and you can get yours now. It's as easy as heading to coreycupford.com/workbook and downloading your copy. While you're there, you can also consider joining our dynamic deal-driven community of founders, experts, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. Now back to the show. So when these opportunities come up through serendipity or just the general outlook that's led you guys to this progression, right, to where you got involved in M&A, talk to me a little bit more about the role you're playing. Obviously, you already alluded to making a connection between a buyer and a seller potentially based upon who you know and what they're looking for. And then what are you, beyond introductions, tell me what else you do to help facilitate those kind of deals happening.
Sure. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say that I have worked for an investment bank.
Yeah.
I'm not a lawyer. We let the lawyers go and mess it up on their own, but we're the people that are the go-between. Each one is talking to us and we're making it happen. We're not, at this point, some of the time we have been kind of the negotiator on behalf of people, but often people have an idea of really what they want, and then we take a more hands-off approach. But I think as we get more experienced at it, might be a little bit more hands-on, but even when we're not the people making one offer and taking an offer back, and we're the people who are going the sounding board, and
yeah.
what's going on with this guy? And why is he doing this? And we can go, well, we've got a lot of experience with this guy. He's tough. He will go down to the last detail, but he really means business. So a lot of it is just that we're matchmakers, but I don't think we do a lot more than that, just sort of the intangibles. And if there's a case where people need help I'll tell you the other thing we do that's unique. When you're dealing with manufacturing businesses, a lot of it, as you know, it's all the capital equipment is
Sure.
a huge piece of it. So we're only staying in our niche. We're not trying to do we're not trying to do a window factory. I mean, this is pretty much precision machined parts.
Yes.
So we can go in and we can tell people what the equipment is worth.
Sure.
And if we can't, we know tons of dealers who can. So that gives us a lot of cred and a lot of ability to advise, because we can say, if you had an auction, this would be worth X. And even some of the people we work with who are really experienced and very savvy, they still want us to give our take about what stuff would be worth if you liquidated it, et cetera. And the other thing we've done is a few times, the equipment we sell, a lot of it is mechanical machines. Some of these machines are like 60 years old. And if you had an auction with these machines, they'd be worth nothing. I mean, you'd get $5,000 for them. However, if these machines have work on them, if there's a specific contract that's being made on these machines, all of a sudden this $5,000 piece of equipment is worth a hell of a lot more than $5,000.
Right, because you're buying a piece of business, not just a machine.
Right, and that's the whole reason somebody's buying a business, because and often this is in a way better, because then you don't have all the BS of like all this due diligence stuff and all the lawyers and all the, sorry, no offense. But so we had this case, was it last year? Maybe it was the year before. I don't know. We bought a company. They had 30 machines. They're called Davenports. And these are machines that if we sold them, maybe we could get $30,000 for. But if they were at an auction, they'd get $5,000.
Yeah.
But we knew of a private equity firm that had factories with these machines in Mexico and the United States, et cetera. So rather than sell them the company and make them fold it up, we went to the owner of the factory and we just bought all of their machines with the good faith that their customers would stay with it. And we knew, the worst case scenario, we'd have a bunch of machines that we knew how to sell. We'd come out whole in the end.
Right.
But we were able to 3x what we had bought. And obviously nothing is easy, nothing is simple, and there's risk, but it's nice to be able to do that. We tried another one last year and it didn't work. So now we're having an auction and we'll make a little bit of change with it. And it's a gamble when you actually buy stuff, but this is a way where we differentiate ourselves. And then maybe we could cherry pick a machine in the middle of the deal. Maybe the person that happened on another deal, the buyer wanted the company and he didn't want a couple of the machines. And we said, all right, we'll buy these machines and then we can make the deal happen.
Listen, a lot of people would want, what you're describing is a deal that in the worst case scenario, because of your core business and ability to sell machines, and find the right buyers who will pay more than liquidation value, you have the advantage. How many people would want to do a deal where your downside is break even or make a few bucks in the worst case scenario, right? And your upside is 3x that or whatever, right? That's a great situation where, because of your expertise and your company's expertise and relationships,
theoretically,
the downside is that you liquidate the machines and end up at even or even plus a little bit. That's a great deal to do.
Yeah, if you can find them. And the one that we're auctioning off now, it's just a pity because I think this was a case of the company, maybe one of the owners died or something. And then the other owner was just I quit. And before they could even get their heads together to think of selling it as an ongoing business, they already closed the company. And then you're kind of scrambling to see if the work will stay. And it's difficult. It's a moving target. If it was easy, everybody'd do it, right?
Yep. So now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about another kind of deal, which is a business partnership deal. We talked about it and family business in that conversation. I know you said that the family business was always in your back pocket there. You talked about your documentary film dreams and things like that. Now you got involved.
Still doing crazy projects on the side.
That's awesome. I love it. And my wife and I are big documentary fans. We watch a lot of them where it's part of our philanthropic efforts. So we look to, it's in our goal to fund some documentaries over time. But on the family business side, there are so many dynamics, and it's been a little while, but we've had some folks on who are either family business experts who've been in family businesses, and you hear all these crazy stories about the problems with some family businesses. Obviously, there are great examples of family businesses that have grown and great legacy businesses. You hear, that second generation, but even more so, often third generation often screw up the business.
Rags to riches, yeah.
So what is it? Obviously, as we mentioned, nobody needs to disclose anything they're comfortable with, but I know you mentioned working with your father and how, and your experience.
It's complicated. Obviously, my dad worked with his brother for, 40 years or something. And then not to start out with the negative aspect, sometimes divorces are important with relationships, working with my dad it's just such a precious, amazing thing. We publish these blogs every week. He writes a blog and then I do a podcast, which is sort of half podcast, half blog.
Yeah.
And then I'll always edit his blogs and then we'll go back and forth. What's the title? What's the question? What are people going to think about it? And sometimes you have to just stop yourself and go, wow, this is so cool. I'm 43. He's, we're just, or we'll just be talking about a deal. And he's very cerebral. He's very problem solving. He loves to analyze stuff. And it probably annoys other people in that he and I think the most alike in the office. We definitely don't agree on everything, but overall, 99% of the time we come to a an agreement. Sometimes he just goes, "No, I'm doing this," and
Right.
I go, "All right, well, I'll do that if it's not like the worst thing in the world." But he, he's my mentor, and sometimes he says I'm his mentor, which is amazing. Like, he likes podcasts and books and stuff, but I'm always like, I have a commute, and I'm always listening to a lot of podcasts and books and recommending it to him. And it's just funny how, like, when he was my age, I grew up driving in the car and he was always playing Tony Robbins. And he's like the original, like the OG of podcast listeners. So, and now I'm the one going, "Oh, check out this episode about mindfulness," or I know you're in a negotiation. I never split the difference, Chris Voss. It became like my Bible, and I've influenced him to try to use those tactics. Sometimes he just throws it out the window because he's been doing it his way for 50 years. But at the same time, it's great when and sometimes at the office, all of us will just go, "What are you, crazy? You're totally wrong. Like, how can you?" And then sometimes he's just totally right. We all look stupid. Like, he goes with his gut. And that's what you have to do when you're the head honcho of a company. And it's amazing to work together. And we know it's not forever. And we really do give an effort to sometimes just stop and go, "Wow, this is really something."
Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing that I wanted you to talk about that because you mentioned that in the pre-call, and it's not just your words, but it's the expression on your face and the energy and how you talk about it. And I know, listen, I often say business partnerships can be tough. I've been in a few. Some businesses it's worked really well. I've had a couple that have run the course, let's say. And when you add in, so that's just business partnerships generally, and when you add in, family involved in it, it can be very complex. And as a lawyer, we got, what's going on now? I've dealt with before, actually, with brothers who are splitting up a company because they're not getting along. And it's always sad to see. So that ability to treasure the moments, and when you're in a partnership and appreciate the other person, and then when it's your dad, it's actually a very special thing you have.
It's really special. And now that I'm a father, I've got a 1 3/4-year-old, and it's just, I think, when he's just learning to like speak, but I just think to myself, whoa, that would be pretty cool to be working with him. I can't even fathom it really, but then it just makes you reflect about how special it is. My brother and sister, they both didn't go into the business, and my sister's a rabbi. My brother is a psychologist and a coach. And I was talking to my niece the other day. We were all together for the holidays, and we were all talking about giving advice to people. I talk about serendipity. He's a coach for men. She's a rabbi. My niece was like, "You guys all do the same thing."
Right.
We're all talking about our morning rituals and all that.
Love it. So now my final two questions I'm going to hop into now because we're coming on time, although there's so much more we can talk about. Before I ask you my final question, second to last question here is just how can people find out more about you and your company and the things you guys are up to?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yeah. Isn't it a pain when you forget that question or like when... Right. So if you're looking for a CNC machine tool or a screw machine, our company is called Graff Pinkert, GraffPinkert. Today's Machining World is our blog, and I would love it if you would give my podcast a try. It's called Swarfcast, SWARF as in Frank, and then CAST. It's sort of an insider word, but swarf, I guess, it's like the grime and oil and chips and crud in the bottom of a machine, in the belly of a machine. And so that kind of became our brand way back when. So that's where it comes from. But so the podcast is called Swarfcast.
Awesome. So Noah, my final question of the podcast is always about my highest value in life, my highest ideal, which is freedom. And for me, that means everything from freedom for all people around the world, from oppression to why I've been an entrepreneur for decades and haven't had a boss. What does freedom mean to you, and how does it impact your life and business?
All right. Well, thank God I prepared for this podcast. Listened to one of them yesterday, one of the best of, where you talked to like 5 people where they answered this question. So it gave me food for thought. They all said things that I think about all the time, like freedom of your time, free to have time to do whatever you want and not tied down, money freedom, you're not worried about running out. But I had to think of something more interesting than that. And I think it really comes down to mindset. You have to be free in your mind, because I feel like I don't have enough money to feel free, to not have worries. I have goals. Other people, 99% of the world would look at what I have and say, "Oh, yeah. What are you, crazy? You have no problems. You have tons of time. You have tons of money. Like, don't cry me a river." It really just comes down to how you look at things. You have to be free inside to feel all of these great things that I know you talk about, just the freedom of entrepreneurship, of being able to replace yourself. A lot of entrepreneurs, I'm not an entrepreneur at this point. I aspire to be, and I know, but I've read a lot and thought about it a lot. And if you can't replace yourself in your job, you own a job. And that's not freedom whatsoever. I guess, obviously, it's the same stuff that everybody says, or a lot of people say. It's just freedom to do what I want with my time, and freedom to not worry about money, etc. But that's just all mindset. It's so much of it is mindset. They have some statistic where, like, if you make $70,000 or more, then it's really just comes down to mindset. I mean, my grandfather, he was rich. He had several houses. He lived during the Great Depression. He was always worried about having enough money.
Yeah.
He probably, I don't know if he felt free, even though he had the ability to take off work if he wanted, but if you don't feel that you have that ability, then you're not free at all. So that's my response.
Love that, Noah. And listen, anybody who's listened to this podcast for any amount of time knows I talk about mindset a lot. So the fact that you brought it back to mindset in your answer is just a confirmation that I'm not alone here talking about mindset. Noah Graff, thank you for being such a great guest on the DealQuest podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for doing an awesome interview. I'm a student of these, having listened to many and done many. And yeah, it was a great interview. Had a great time. Well done.
Thanks again for being on. Till next week. Thank you for joining me on this episode of DealQuest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. I want to invite you to a unique way to tap into the wisdom and experience of the DealQuest community. The Deal Den is a place where entrepreneurs, high-level executives, and business leaders come together, support each other's growth and success, and share what's working best, as well as what challenges we are facing right now. You will get input not only from me, but from all of our members. We collaborate and serve each other. To join us, go to corykupfer.com/dealden. I'll see you there. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your DealQuest will bring.